Welcome to Engineering Economic course. We were talking about cost concepts and design economics, which was chapter 2 of your book. In our previous lecture, we started talking about the costs and different categories of costs. We talked about fixed and variable costs. We talked about direct and indirect costs. And in today's lecture, we will continue our discussion on different types and different categories of costs. We will see cash costs, sunk costs, opportunity costs, and also we will talk about life cycle costs. So let's get started. We can categorize the costs as being cash costs or non-cash costs. These non-cash costs are sometimes referred to as book costs. So what is a cash cost? Cash cost involves payment of cash. So in engineering economics, we will be considering these cash flows. I mean, you are paying the money, you are earning the money. There is a transaction of this cash. In an example for a non-cash cost or a book cost is depreciation cost. In depreciation, we will see later through the end of this semester. In depreciation, it considers the loss in the value of the equipment or in the machines. So for example, you buy a car and you use this car, let's say for 2 years. And during these 2 years of time, with respect to the usage of the car, or because the model of the car is now being for 2 years, it's an older car, it loses value. So this loss of value is in fact a cost, but there is no transaction of money here. So therefore it is called a book cost. On the other hand, if there is a cash cost, for example, you buy a car, then you make the payment of the car and you get the car. So since there is a transaction of money, it is called a cash cost. Another category of costs can be referred to or named as sunk costs. Sunk costs are past costs that they have already been incurred and you cannot recover these costs. Okay, and in making a decision, these sunk costs or these past costs are irrelevant. Okay, sometimes these costs are contrasted with prospective costs, which are the future costs. So sunk costs are past costs. So let me give an example. So we said that these sunk costs are costs that has already been incurred by your past actions and they are not relevant to your future decisions. For example, you spend $500 to replace the brakes of your car. Okay? And if you decide to sell your car, this $500, this replacement, it doesn't have an effect. It cannot increase the value, selling price of the car. You cannot demand more since you replaced the brakes because the car should have the brakes at all. You cannot sell the car without the brake pads. Okay? And when you replace them, you cannot ask for more money. So this is a past cost or sunk cost. Also, for example, you with your friend, you went to cinema and you started watching a movie. You selected a movie, but after 15 minutes, 20 minutes, you decided that this movie is not good enough and you decided to get out. But you still want to watch a movie. So what happened to the amount of money that you gave for the first movie? It's irrelevant. It is an outcome of your past decision and it's irrelevant for your future decisions. So if you want to watch a movie, you will select another one and make another payment, and you cannot say that, sorry, I already gave this amount to another movie and now I want to pay half of the money. Okay, you cannot say it, and you cannot make your decision depending on this past action. If you didn't like the movie, then that money that you paid for that movie is a sunk cost. Another example can be this. So suppose that your firm is considering the replacement of a piece of equipment. Currently, this equipment costs $50,000 originally, but you started using it, and maybe after some time it lost value due to depreciation and etc. So in your company records, this let's say this equipment is shown with a value of $20,000. Current value is $20,000. But if you want to sell it, it can be sold in the second-hand market for an estimated $5,000. Okay. Then if you want to make some replacement analysis, so I have this equipment and I want to replace it. If you use this original value, which is $50,000, it is irrelevant. It's a sunk cost. You used it, and the current value of the equipment is not $50,000. Okay, so you cannot use $50,000 in your decisions. It's a sunk cost. However, there is one view which says that the sunk cost should be considered as the difference between the value shown in the company records, which is $20,000, and the present realizable selling price, which is, according to this viewpoint, $20,000 minus $5,000, which is equivalent to $15,000. Okay. If you consider the first value, which is $50,000, or if you consider the second view of the sunk cost, which is $15,000, neither of these values can be considered or should be considered in an engineering economic analysis. Okay, but only the difference, these $15,000, may affect your income taxes. You can reduce that value from the taxable amount. We will see maybe this in this lecture, but it's an advanced topic for now. If you can do this, then it is a relevant cost. Otherwise, this amount, either the first view saying that this $50,000 is a sunk cost, or the second view saying that $15,000 is the sunk cost, okay, it is irrelevant to your engineering economic analysis. Another cost category is the opportunity cost. It is defined as the potential benefit that is given up as you seek an alternative course of action. For example, currently you are pursuing a university degree, okay? And if you didn't do this university degree, what you would do? Maybe you would start working somewhere without a university degree, and in 4 years you will be experienced for 4 years and you will earn a salary, and all those benefits that you will obtain during these 4 years that you gave up by coming to the university, by admitting to the university, is the opportunity cost of pursuing this university degree or college degree. Another example can be this. Assume you have 5,000 riyals and you bought a car with this 5,000 riyals. What is the opportunity cost of this? It is the next best alternative. Okay, next best alternative. What can it be? For example, instead of buying the car, You can go and buy an apartment, let's say. I don't know if you can buy in that price or not, or you can buy a land and then construct a building on this land, or give this apartment. If you buy an apartment, you give it for rent. You rent the apartment and you will earn monthly rental fees. Okay, so the opportunity cost of buying a car with $5,000 will be the earning from these rents, or the value that you obtain, the utility that you will obtain by buying a land or constructing a building. Or the simplest thing is this: you just take this $5,000 and open a new bank account and start earning interest. And for example, after 2 years, with this $5,000, you will earn an interest rate, for example, for 6% per year. And after 2 years, with this 6%, you will earn, let's say, 60 reals or more than 60 reals. Then this amount, 600 reals, sorry, and this amount will be your opportunity cost for buying a car with this $5,000. Okay, so it is the next best alternative that you gave up. If we consider the same examples that we considered for the sunk cost, so you have in your firm, you have an equipment and you want to perform a replacement analysis. Replacement analysis is this: you have an equipment and there is two options. You can either you continue with the same equipment, or you go and buy a new equipment instead of that one, and you want to identify which one is preferable. Okay, original cost of the equipment was $50,000. In your company records, the value of the equipment will be shown as $20,000. Let's assume, we are assuming this. But if you want to sell this equipment in the second-hand market, you can only sell it for $5,000. So if you want this to perform this replacement analysis, if you want to consider the opportunity cost of keeping this equipment instead of replacing it, you can consider this. Since you keep the equipment in the firm, you are giving up this $5,000. What you can do with this $5,000? Okay, so what you can do, you can just sell the item for $5,000 and you get this money and use for an additional investment. Either you buy a new machinery, or you open a bank account and put this money into that bank account and you will start earning the interest rate. Okay, so this earnings from this $5,000 is the opportunity cost of keeping the equipment. Okay, always think in this way: opportunity cost. In this opportunity cost, when you make a decision, the opportunity cost of that decision is what you would earn in the next best alternative. If you didn't do that, if you didn't make that decision, what you would do with that money, and what would be the benefit for you for that of that decision. The last category of costs that we are going to talk about is the life cycle costs. And life cycle costs includes all the relevant costs, both recurring and non-recurring, that are related to a product. So what are the relevant costs for a product? You should consider the whole lifetime of the product, starting from the idea, conceptualization, the design, production, and after the production you sell it in the market, but after some time maybe the life of the product ends and you need to dispose and retire this product. So all relevant costs during the lifetime of a product, starting it is idea phase, design and research and development phase, until to the disposal of the product and abandoning the production, all costs are included in life cycle costs. So we can include the initial investment costs plus the operating and maintenance costs and repair costs, all the replacement costs for equipment and machinery, the energy costs, the disposal costs. All these costs should be included. Also, you should consider the salvage value, but salvage value is an earning. It is not a cost, but it's an earning. What's the salvage value? You can think in this way. You need a car for, let's say, 5 years, and you buy the car by giving that initial money, the selling price. So this is the initial investment cost. And then in order to use this car for 5 years, you need insurance, you need regular maintenance and repairs. So maintenance and repair, you need fuel, which is energy costs, and etc. And after 5 years, when your need is over, what will you do with the car? Either you will sell it in the second-hand market, and when you sell the car, you will earn some portion of the initial selling price. So maybe you bought the car for 10,000 reals, but after 5 years, you sell it in the second-hand market for 1,000 real. Okay, so this 1,000 real, the selling price, is the salvage value, and it is not a cost, but it is an earning. This graph shows the some costs and potential cost savings during the lifetime of the products. So this horizontal axis shows the time, actually the lifetime, and we can simply divide it into two phases, the acquisition phase and the operation phase. In the acquisition phase, you start with developing for the product, designing the product. You start with assessing the needs, define the requirements, and then you perform a conceptual design of the product. You make some advanced development and you test the prototype of the product. Then you perform a detailed design. You plan the production and construction. Also, you perform the facility and resource acquisition. So this is the acquisition phase, and at this point your product is ready for mass production and selling in the market. So you start production or construction. If it's a building, for example, you construct it. If it is a product, you produce it. And during this time, it is in operation or in customer use. You perform maintenance and support for the product. But after some time, the product is now old, and it's an older design, older technology, and you cannot sell it anymore. Think about the mobile phones. Each and every year, the companies come up with a new design. And when in this year, in 2000, for example, 21, you cannot sell the phone from 2020, 2019. They are disposed. They are not in the market anymore. There are new technologies. Okay, so it's the end of the product. So for some items, especially in electronics, the lifetimes of the products are very short. But in some cases, the lifetimes are longer, even tens of years. Okay, and if we look at the costs associated with the operations, at each time period of this lifetime, we see that, okay, so this line shows the cumulative committed life cycle cost. Okay, this is the committed life cycle cost. And for example, at this time of the design phase, you commit this portion of the costs associated with this product, developing and producing this product. This is the committed one. This is the actual life cycle cost. So you commit this one here, but actually the actual cost that you spend is for this much. Okay. And we see that this cumulative committed life cycle cost increases rapidly during this design phase, and when it goes to this operational phase, it increases at a slower rate. But when we consider the actual cumulative life cycle cost, we see that it increases rapidly during the production or construction time. And after some time, during the retirement phase, it increases at a slower rate. And this line over here shows the potentials for cost savings in the life cycle cost savings. And during the initial phases of the life cycle, there is a huge potential for saving. I mean, with a better design, you design it in a better way, by considering the needs of the customers and etc., you can reduce the whole life cycle cost. But when the design is completed, when the product is started to be produced, then there is a smaller potential for saving from the life cycle costs. Okay, so this potential reduces gradually as the life cycle as we move forward in the life cycle. So we considered several costs here during the life cycle costs. We mentioned the investment cost. Actually, in the example of buying a new car, the investment cost is the initial amount of money that you need to pay to buy the car. Okay, sometimes it's called capital investment. Sometimes it's called investment cost. It is the money required for most activities of the acquisition phase. So if you, for example, establish an supermarket, then you need to buy the land, you need to construct the building, you need to buy and install the necessary equipment, freezers, all those things. And usually you do it at the beginning of the project for one time, and this cost is called the investment cost or the capital investment. Second cost related to these life cycle costs is the working capital. And working capital actually is the necessary amount of money required to start up and support the operation activities. For example, if you have a manufacturing facility, you need raw materials in your inventory. You have finished goods inventory you need. You need all these, the spare parts in your inventory. All these are counted as working capital. So as you continue production, the levels of inventories change. Sometimes you used the raw material and the raw material inventories are reduced, but after some time you replenish them and they are increased and etc. So there is an amount of money that you tie up, waiting in your inventory. When we say a product is in the inventory, actually your money is in the inventory. And since the levels of these are changing, sometimes it's replenishing, sometimes it's reducing, we call it is working, okay? It's a working capital. Another life cycle cost is the operation and maintenance cost, and this cost includes most of the recurring annual expenses For example, repairing your car, changing the oil, changing the brake pads, changing the oil filter in your car, or in a manufacturing facility, maintaining the machines and equipment, also all the necessary amount of money to operate that facility, the salaries of the workers, the fuel, the energy costs, all of them are included in this operation and maintenance cost. At the end of the life cycle, especially if the product or if your manufacturing facility, whatever we are talking about as a product is, especially if they are harmful to the environment or to health of people, you need to dispose the manufacturing facility or the product in a proper way. And sometimes it is very costly, especially for example for chemical facilities and etc. So this disposal cost includes some non-recurring costs for shutting down the operation. As an example, we can consider the cleanup of a site where a chemical processing plant had been located. Okay, so you need to clean up the site. You need to, for example, clean up the construction site. You construct a building, and in order to construct that building, you need all those cranes, all those necessary spare parts and equipment. And when you finish the construction, you need to clean up all these. Okay, so they are also called as retirement and disposal costs. So let's summarize what we learned for this cost terminology. We talked about fixed, variable, and incremental costs. And most importantly, we said that if the cost changes with the level of business activity, then it's a variable cost. But if it does not change, then it is a fixed cost. And the incremental cost is the necessary cost to increase the level of activity by 1 unit. Okay, when you want to increase the current level of activity by 1 or more units, the additional amount of cost that you need to do that is called incremental cost. Recurring and non-recurring costs, we said that if costs are repetitive and occur when an organization produces goods or services in a continuing basis, we call that they are recurring. For example, the insurance cost. You need to renew your insurance cost each and every year, so it's a recurring cost. The salary of the workers, you need to pay that each and every month, so it's a recurring cost. But on the other hand, the investment cost, initial investment cost, it's a one-time cost, it's not recurring. Also, we categorize these costs as being direct, indirect, and standard costs. Okay. If we are producing, for example, a product, or if we have an output, and then if we can measure the cost of something to come up with that output, or if we can allocate this cost specifically for that output in a reasonable way, easily, then this is a direct cost. As an example, consider the production of a car. So all the sheet metal that you are using in the production of that car, you know the total amount of sheet metal that you are using, and you know the price of that sheet metal. You can simply calculate the cost of sheet metal for each car. And this is a direct cost. It's called direct manufacturing or direct material cost. If you cannot do this allocation easily, then it is called an indirect cost. For example, the energy that is used for lighting the manufacturing facility, or the salary of the administrative staff. How you can allocate this cost to a specific product, to a single car. It is very difficult, and therefore it is an indirect cost. And in the standard cost, we said that in order to come up with the unit price before you make that activity, we calculate the standard cost. It includes the direct costs, direct material cost, direct labor cost, plus the overhead costs. But usually the overhead costs are subject to changes and fluctuations. I mean, the estimates can be wrong. There may be a variance and it can be realized in a different way. Also, we talked about the cash cost in today's lecture. We talked about the cash cost, sunk cost, opportunity cost, and life cycle costs. Okay, so this is the summary of the cost terminology.